What up? I'm your boy Nick. The GearSeek is the all-new MSI MPG B850i Edge TI Wi-Fi. We had a little bit of a look at this board at Computex, and as I mentioned in that video, I already had this one waiting for us here back at the studio. So let's do our usual thing. Let's take a little bit of a look at this all-new ITX board, the AM5 board you've been waiting for. Let's dive in. But before that, here's a word from today's video sponsor.
This video is brought to you by VIPSCDkey.com. Have you ever installed Windows 11 only to see the watermark of death? You don't need to fork out a couple of $100s for a key. You can grab one from today's video sponsor, from VIPSCDkey.com for a tenth of the price. You can use our code GEAR to get 30% off for this month only. How good is that? That takes that already cheap Windows 11 key and makes it even cheaper. It's easy as placing your order. Bingo bango. You've got your new key on your orders page. You chuck that key into the activation screen and you're good to go. No more watermark of death. Use code GEAR to get 30% off for this month only. Link in the description. On with the video. Back to you, Nick.
All right, here it is, the motherboard you guys have been waiting for, the MSI MPG B850i Edge TI Wi-Fi. Let's get that board out of the way so we can take a little bit of a closer look at everything that comes with this brand new mini ITX board from MSI. Exciting times. All right, first of all, we've got this. This is the Easy Connector. There's a header on the motherboard that will allow for PWM fan connection as well as addressable RGB with a single connector for both, obviously, fans and RGB, and that's what this breakout cable is for. There's also the antenna for the built-in Wi-Fi 7 on the board as well with these clever new connectors. It has these kind of magnetic connectors for connecting the antennas now, which is kind of nice. There's also all of the documentation as well as a few stickers to help you get started if you've never built before, as well as stickers you can wrap around your cables for helping you label everything once you've built your system. There's also a single SATA or SATA cable for your 2.5-inch SSDs or those good old 3.5-inch spinning RAS drives, or as some people like to call them, regular old hard drives. There's also this breakout cable for the front panel wiring. This is for the lights and the switches to turn on your system and to let you know that your system is up and running. There's also a 3-pin 5V addressable RGB to JST connector. This is for adapting RGB from 3-pin 5V addressable RGB to the other type of connector you would typically see. All right, enough jibber jabber. Let's take a closer look at the B850i Edge TI Wi-Fi and see what's on this board, because this one is quite interesting and you guys have been waiting for it. First of all, we've got all of the front panel headers here. We've got USB 2.0. We've got the front panel header for the lights and the switches, as well as the front panel audio header. It's kind of tucked away above the top PCIe slot, but to make it easier, here's another clip just so you can get a bit of a closer look. On the right-hand edge of the board, we've got a USB 3.25 gigabit port. We've got a USB Type-C 20 gig port. We then have the Easy Connector with the connection for the cable that I mentioned previously for 3-pin 5V addressable RGB, as well as the PWM fan header. There's also two SATA or SATA ports for those 2.5-inch SSDs or those 3.5-inch hard drives. There's a 24-pin power connector to send juice to your brand new B850i Edge TI Wi-Fi, and two PWM fan headers. I also wanted to mention there is another PWM fan header that is hiding, and that header is just above the PCIe slot on the right-hand side. On the top left-hand side of the board, there's also a single 8-pin EPS power connector to send juice to your Ryzen 7000, 8000, or 9000 processor. Going back to that PCIe slot, it has a single PCIe Gen 5 by 16 slot. There's no quick release mechanism for the top PCIe slot because you typically don't need it for a mini ITX board. As for the VRM layout on this board, it features an 8+2+1 phase DRPS VRM layout with 90 amp smart power stages. This is something that we covered in our Computex coverage of this board, and if you're interested in seeing that take on this board, check that out at the link in the video description. Otherwise, this video is a lot more detailed than that quick look at Computex at MSI HQ. Because this is an AM5 board, it has a standard AM5 socket with standard AM5 cooler mounting. I'm going to pop the socket open just in case you've never seen one of these sockets before, and I say this in all of our motherboard content. I typically do this just in case you've never seen inside a socket before, and the truth is, many people who watch our motherboard videos are trying to build a PC for the first time and they've never seen inside of a socket. This saves you having to do it yourself, and basically I'm here to help you out, guys. That's what we're here for. That's what Gear Seekers is all about. I'm the Gear Seeker. My name's Nick. Great to meet you. Let's flip the board over and take a bit of a look here. Now, there's not a lot going on here other than there being another heatsink on the back of the board, which is kind of a support bracket for the VRM layout on the board. Essentially, this bracket is to add some additional mounting pressure for the VRM layout on the back side of the board, because top is not always the best, bottom is also helpful. As for the RAM configuration on this board, it will support 2 DDR5 DIMMs at up to 128 gigs of total capacity at 8200 megatransfers. Now, remember, and I always say this with all of our motherboard content, this is the maximum specification of the board. This is not the recommendation, or it may not be stable, but the board is technically capable of doing that speed. All right, let's take off the M.2 heatsink to take a bit of a closer look at what lies beneath. This board has 2 M.2 slots, but before that, there is a fan here, and this is not just designed to help cool the M.2, it's also for chipset cooling. The M.2 slot on the top side of the board is a PCIe Gen 5x4 M.2 slot, and if we flip the board over to take a bit of a look, there's another M.2 slot here. This is a PCIe Gen 4x4 slot on the back side. As for the rear I/O, we've got a clear CMOS button, we've got a BIOS flashback button, we've got an HDMI port, there's 2 5 gigabit USB Type A ports. Next to that is 2 10 gigabit USB Type A ports. There's a 20 gigabit USB Type-C port with another 10 gigabit USB Type-A port. There's the 5 gigabit Ethernet port for the built-in 5 gigabit networking, as well as the antenna connectors for the built-in Wi-Fi 7. There's a line-in jack, a line-out jack, and an optical/SPDIF audio output with an integrated I/O shield. But it's B-roll time, I think. I hope you guys enjoyed taking a little bit of a look at this all-new ITX board from MSI. This is the AM5 board that's been missing from MSI's AM5 lineup, and I spoke to MSI about this at Computex, and they said that their focus for the rest of this generation is AM5, given how poor the performance is with Intel's new CPUs. That's paraphrasing from them, but essentially that's the whole story. And this is what we're seeing from all of the motherboard vendors at the moment. They're not really happy with the performance of the Intel platform that is current, and AM5 is the push forward. In terms of features for this board, as mentioned earlier in the video, this is quite stacked for what it is. It's got an 8+2+1 phase VRM, it's got 90 amp power stages, and it's got lots of M.2 storage, 5 gigabit Ethernet, which is pretty ubiquitous across all of MSI's motherboards, including the bottom end all the way up the stack now, which is something I can get behind. It's got proper Wi-Fi 7, as well as that this will support your X3D CPUs as well. And it's looking pretty interesting. Now, in terms of the design of this board, it does have one thing that stood out to me, given I have a few of these new MSI mini ITX boards. There is no heatsink at the top of the board for VRM cooling because they've squished the entire VRM layout into the heatsink underneath where the I/O cover is. And that's not what we're seeing with a bunch of MSI's other mini ITX boards at the moment. But again, I think it kind of makes it a bit nicer to build in proper small form factor cases because there isn't a heatsink above your socket. So it does make it a bit easier for clearance and that kind of stuff. Overall, this board is looking pretty interesting. One thing that I want to note is the B650i board that was launched last generation was abysmal. It was one of the most unreliable boards that I've ever used, and I'm hoping that this board does not suffer the same fate as that one. But given the other mini ITX boards that I've used from MSI over the years, yeah, I don't think it's going to be the case. I did have a lot of feedback to MSI about that last gen board. Now, if you're interested in this board, it's not out yet. It's coming out in the next few weeks or so. You're looking at spending around about $269 US, or whatever that is in Australian dollars, or dollaradoos as we like to call it. And that's the Gear Seek, ladies and gents. I'm your boy Nick, and I hope you enjoyed taking a look at this new board with me. We've got a build coming with this one really, really soon. There's lots of awesome new small form factor cases that we took a look at Computex. We probably do have a case roundup coming, so make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on and all of that jazz. I'm out of here.